Hello and welcome back, dweebs. Happy Sunday morning. I have the specialist of guests with you on the Lord's Day Sunday. That was not the way I meant to phrase that, Danny. Welcome back. How you been, brother?
The specialist. Oh, I'm just doing great.
I really should write copy before I do this.
I'm feeling the specialist today because we're about to talk about one of the specialist guys to my I mean, it was before I was a teenager. It was like a, childhood hero, I guess. Hero. I don't know if hero is the right word either, because I always thought he was a goober, but we love Vince McMahon, baby. Or wait, we'll get there.
So
nice to be here, though. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. I love it whenever Danny gets to come down here and hang out with us dweebs. So we've got a big old show lined up for you. Tons of topics and questions that we have for each other, because we have really different perspectives from this thing. As those of you who've listened to any show I've been on long enough, I'll make a wrestling reference or two. So that I watch these things and know about these things. Also, shout out to the chat, Headbug and Andy Zucchini.
Guys?
What is up?
Nice
shout out. And so what we're going to do here, we are going to go through the episodes as best as we can in order, but we also have some general topics to discuss. And since I am a nerd for all of this and know a lot of the backstory, you may hear a little less from me early on. We're going to dive in and talk about what maybe was left out, who was lying. Did Hulk Hogan tell the truth even one time? We'll get to all of that stuff. Don't worry. But to start things off, I feel like it's best to kind of hand it to you here, Danny, with a more limited perspective of what was going on back then. You know who most of these people are, but this show, in my opinion, was geared more towards folks like you who would have an interest and would want to watch it, instead of people like me who have known about some of these stories for years and are like, y'all spent this much time and you left all of this stuff out. So I'm here to fill those gaps eventually. But Danny, how did you feel about the show in general? And then probably your impression on Vince McMahon as it went along.
So yeah, I mean, I enjoyed the whole ride. First off, thought it was good. I think it's worth watching if you've got. It's funny. I proposed this to Kevin. I was like, "Hey, we should talk about McMahon," because I saw it on Netflix. I was like, "Yeah, dude, that sounds fun." I thought it was just a documentary, like a movie. I thought it was like I was gonna in and out 2 hours or whatever. And then I realized what I signed up for. I'm like, damn, dude, I gotta invest a weekend in this. But
6 hours, pal.
I mean, it's all there though. Like, I didn't feel at any moment bored. I was along for the ride. But I think you're correct in saying like this was tailor-made for someone like me that was like that's aware of all the culture, maybe had a parent that was into it when they were younger and that's why they watched it. So like, of course, almost any young boy that's our age sat there and fucking watched one WrestleMania or wrestling match or something. Like, what it is. And I watched a lot with my stepdad. Like, my stepdad cosplayed as Stone Cold Steve Austin. So
yes.
It was it's even funnier looking back on it now. When I was seeing the Steve Austin shit, I was like, damn, my stepdad really was like, he was trying to be Steve Austin. He had everything. The shaved bald head, the goatee, the I love beers, brother. Fucking
kick my boss's ass.
Yeah, always trying to be a hard ass. Like, yep, that's exactly what he was going for. But I digress. It was a great ride. If you're a wrestling fan, there's categories to this. So like, I feel like you're a wrestling fan, I'm like a wrestling acquaintance. I don't know what you would call it, but like I think that it's fun. The whole thing is fun or whatever, but I don't really know. I only know of the front facing stuff, the characters, the whatnot. I don't really know. Tourist is a good way,
Tourist.
Headbutt.
He does no kayfabe. He's not keeping up with the kayfabe.
I don't know as much about the behind the scenes. So yeah, like somebody, a tourist like me, this is perfect because you not only learn all the fun stuff about McMahon, but then you get reminded and you get the nostalgia of all the stuff that you experienced, especially if you were the same era as me, like the Attitude era with Steve Austin and McMahon. Like you get a little taste of all that too, and then they bring it home for you at the end and put a nice bow on it with the current. I mean, do you even call them allegations? The texts are out there, so I don't know what you call it, but it really takes you everywhere and kind of gets you. I didn't feel that it was biased, and that was kind of something that I wanted to ask you, knowing a bit more about it. And I feel like we can go through episodes after this little spiel, but did you feel as a whole that it was one way or the other, that it was glazing him too much, that it was, maybe a little too harsh at times? I don't know. What do you think?
I would have to say, if I'm putting it on a scale from glaze to berry, we are much closer to that Hawk Tua than we are
Yeah.
the Undertaker. All right. So
Yeah.
they glazed this man on multiple opportunities. They left out entire details of situations that would really paint him in a different light that would have made the heel turn, to use an industry term, easy for me to say, pal, would have been a much more slow burn for that arc becoming a villain, much more like Emperor Palpatine going from senator to emperor
Does it
over.
all come back to Star Wars?
It always does. Yeah, I'm just trying to plug the Wednesday show here, but this is all an elaborate ruse,
Love
just
that.
just so I could get you 8 minutes in to plug you with an ad. But no, they left out a lot of stuff. And so, to use an example, the purchasing of all those other territories, the stealing of a bunch of people's top guys, something that he went on to cry about later when Ted Turner and WCW did it. If you remember that, it
Yeah.
wasn't fair. These are guys that I made them stars, and I thought we had something, and they went and took more money. Like, do you fucking hear yourself?
Well,
man?
when
Like,
it's funny too when he talks about that, he does like the little he does. I mean, to be contemporary politics, I mean, current politics about it. He does a little JD Vance, and he's like, because they're like, didn't you do the same thing back in the day with the territories? Like you went around to the territories, you bought out their best talent, and then you brought it to you.
yeah.
Like, isn't that what you're saying that the WCW is doing to you? And he's like, well, sometimes you just gotta, I might not think that way, but you put it out there for the narrative. And the news starts to shape it a certain way. It's like, yeah, okay. Like, I appreciated that at least. Like, they didn't get him very many times to, I feel like, be very earnest. And that was one of the times, at least. Like, they talked it out of him. Like, he had his things in his head that he knew he was going to say. And they kind of pulled that one out of him, I feel like. Like, yeah, do you really feel that way? And he's like, well, sometimes I just make it up. It's what I do best.
Yeah, I just need you guys to run with it. Rules for thee and rules for me, pal. You don't like it, you better get used to the taste of shit and learn to enjoy it. If we were playing bingo or doing a drinking game, I had no idea. I have heard the eat shit and learn to like the taste a bunch of times. I didn't realize I was going to hear it that much time.
Everybody else did too, because they were saying it. Like, I think Steve Austin at one point says the whole spiel. It's like he definitely said that to all of them on multiple occasions. He's like, yeah, you better start spooning that shit and enjoying the
Learn to
taste.
like it, pal. I'm gonna mail you a spoon so you can eat my ass.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, well, I mean, what you were hitting at there, I guess, is kind of where the first episode goes. So, do you just want to go there? I have a couple notes here. You were talking about the I mean, that's definitely like it starts off giving you a nice intro to him, like how he got into the industry. His dad was a guy that had a territory that he was in control of. The United States was kind of separated into wrestling territories, and then Vince McMahon Jr., right?
Ooh,
Changes all that.
which is funny. A brief pause. This episode is called Junior, which on its own, a huge dig at Vince McMahon's ego. He hated being called two things, Vinny and Junior. I'm sure part of the
Right.
junior had to do with his father abandoning him for 12 years. That might have had. I wouldn't want to be called Junior either. But also, he would point out that Vince Senior has a different middle name, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. But Vince would always say, "No, he's Vincent something McMahon. I'm Vincent Kennedy McMahon. It's not the same, pal. Don't call me Junior, pal. I can't take it." So I love that they first episode, boom, titled Junior. You know,
Junior.
because he went
So do you
out of
think
his
that's
way
a
to put
do
out
you
a
think that's
tweet.
purpose? Do you think that's on purpose?
I kind of do, and I think that
I love that.
like that first episode and then the entire last episode are probably the reasons he went and put out that tweet that said, you know, it's basically this an assassination of my character. Don't believe everything you see. There's two sides to every story. And then you see this and you're like, what were you so afraid of? What else did they get you that they didn't that is on the cutting room floor right now that they weren't able, maybe they didn't have enough evidence to add it to this, because there's a lot of stuff missing here. I'm going to be honest with you.
Do you think McMahon ever went to a Diddy party
Oh God, yeah,
with Trump?
I would think so.
They all went together.
Well, think before there were Diddy parties, there was the grotto at Hugh Hefner's mansion. Very similar
And you know he
honeypot
did that.
situation, allegedly. All I'm saying is if a rich dude has an underground water cave where people can fuck, just probably don't use it. Just like get a hotel, honestly. If you're at a rich dude's fuck party, a little free advice for you on the Lord's Day. Just leave. Because it sounds like you're being set up to be blackmailed for the rest of your life. So you know what? Just stay away from any eyes wide shut parties. And, you know, advice you probably don't need, but we never want to assume here. We'd rather everybody be safe.
You know, I feel like Hefner doesn't get shit. I feel like as much I feel like everybody still thinks he's cool or he was cool. Like his legacy, which is a big thing in this. We'll get to that, I guess. The legacy thing. But Hefner's legacy, even though he's probably equally as bad of a scumbag, I'm sure he did some gross things behind the scene. He was trafficking women in open public is essentially what he was doing. He's like, come to my house where I have a harem that does whatever I want. But anyway, of course he was not there. There was never any wrongdoing from Hugh, but
oh yeah, no, a dude with 3 wives at the same time, that's above board.
Right. But perception wise, like there's no way that Vince, before he is gone, leaves this mortal plane, he can't change the narrative. Like his legacy is always going to be like, hey, maybe he was a badass, a hard ass, whatever, but a scumbag hard ass, like a dude, like a piece of shit businessman or whatever you want to say. But like people like Hefner, I feel, at least Hefner in particular, yeah, I think people still think that he was just cool. I need a 6-hour series. Okay. That's the next one we'll do.
There we go. Okay. You know what? We could also get if Woody Harrelson would be willing to do it. We could do like a people versus Larry Flint thing. I think Woody would could pull off Hugh Hefner. The look is there. He's getting a little older, you know. Might have to run through a Christian Bale diet to get quite as
He, you know,
ghastly skinny as old Hugh, but
the thing about Hollywood actors is like, I always felt like Hugh was a small man. I don't really even know. I should look that up. Like how tall Hugh Hefner? 5'9". So yeah,
Ooh, let's go.
he's like my height. Uh
Oh,
so
whoops. I
yeah.
mean, it's perfectly reasonable. It's just perfectly acceptable height.
But
Whoops.
he's like 5'9". He's taller than me actually, but he always came off to me as a small man. And I feel like Hollywood, the everybody has too big of a stature. Like, I don't know. I feel like I need a little man to play Hugh Hefner.
Tom Cruise as Hugh Hefner.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, think about it. The parallels there, you know, Scientology and Playboy Mansion, probably not too far off from each other, how they behave.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's astute. I would agree with that.
Oh, but anyways, enough about Hugh. We're here for McMahon, right?
Damn right, pal.
What did I put down for
Peter
this? I made a couple good points here that I wanted to bring up to you. Like we talked about the poaching of the talent, which is definitely funny, like we said, for him later on in the documentary to be like, man, they really stole my talent. I built up Hulk Hogan.
The poor billionaire. The billionaire stole all my money from me. And the other thing, while we're talking about how they glossed over the kind of underhanded tactics that he used getting these other big stars and destroying territories one at a time, they also didn't really talk about how helpful old Papa McMahon. We will, for the sake of this show, and because I don't really like Vince McMahon, we'll go ahead with the junior senior aesthetic for now. Make it easier for everybody. So Senior loaned Vince McMahon the money to buy him out. So essentially, he gave his son the company and said, "You have a year to pay me back with the money that the company generates." So
they do a good job of presenting that, though, or at least Vince does when he talks about it, that it wasn't that his dad gave him a loan like that. It was that Vince came up with the idea to propose to his dad. He said, "I'll give you all the money. Just give me a year and I'll do it in a year." And he was surprised that I would even propose anything like that, because if I missed one payment, then he got all the money or whatever, blah, blah, blah. So, like, in reality, it's his dad giving him a bone, but he frames it like, "Oh, I did that.
some huge
I'm the
obstacle he
go-getter."
overcame. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas meanwhile, it was a successful business. So really all he had to do was not fuck it up. All he had to do was not crash the car and and then he'd get this business for free. Meanwhile, there are other partners, people more deserving that didn't get a chance. That would end up have to work for Vince later, like Gorilla Monsoon. Oh, I can't wait till we get to the Jesse Ventura parts of this story.
Yep, I've got some Jesse
That son of
Ventura
a bitch,
stuff
Hulk Hogan.
I want to talk about.
What
But
up, V-Dub?
hey, V-Dub, nice to see you. But yes, with this, you say that the thing about his dad kind of threw him a bone, and then later on, right before the ending episode where they lay out all the lawsuits and all the bad shit that he's done recently, there's an episode about the family, and you kind of get into like the dynamic and blah blah blah, and it seems like Shane, his son, wanted to, or thought maybe he would take over the company from his father someday. And you get that vibe the whole time, but you also get a vibe that they're not very tight the whole time. You know what I mean? Like that dad and son kind of don't get along very well and yada yada. But when Shane asks Vince, like, like there's a point where he asks him a business proposition. We'll talk about that later too when we get to that episode. But like when Shane wants a bone from his dad's like, I worked for everything that I did. I did it all myself, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, Vince really did get, a handout from his father. And Vince didn't want to do that for his own son. He didn't do that for his own son. He didn't want to. He didn't. I mean, the jig's up now. So, Shane's kind of fucked probably when it comes to all this now. But yeah, dad never just gave it over like Vince kind of got. So,
and Vince stabbed his dad in the back. The thanks that Junior gave Senior for that was going back on his promise to his dying father that he would not go against the rest of the NWA. So brief pause for your wrestling nerd moment so we can get some of the historical context. The National Wrestling Alliance was essentially like the Continental Congress of wrestling at the time, a very loose affiliation, a governing body, if you will, that would help reinforce the imaginary lines of the territories and settle any disputes. And on top of it, you would have your NWA champions. So whoever would win that would then go touring around to the other territories to fight some of their top guys to basically kind of elevate whoever the top person was in Missouri or whoever to become more of a national face. Well, Vincent Sr. was a part of the National Wrestling Alliance, as with many of these promoters were all family businesses handed down generation after generation. They're all carnies that eventually moved into wrestling, essentially. And he had told his father that he was not going to put his colleagues out of business that way. So it wasn't just that he had this ambition and that, which again, I don't think anyone would begrudge someone for having ambition, but it was the way that it all was done, very underhanded. Again, it gets framed in the show as such a way as like, oh, he was just a grinder and it worked his way through everything, all this adversity. Dad didn't help me very much. I was just a small town family business, bought out all my competition. And when Ted Turner does it, it's totally not cool. And it's definitely not the same thing. Why would you ask me that?
No, it seems like that. And the documentary frames it this way. So I'm just making this assumption, I guess. But it seems like Senior would probably be more like Vince's son, Shane. Like it skips a generation kind of thing. Their temperament seemed more similar to me because Shane still seemed driven and like he wanted to, he had ambition or whatever. It's just like it seemed like his dad kind of doused those fires all the time.
Yes.
So like I feel like Vince Sr. and Shane McMahon, Vince's son, Vince Jr.'s son. Gosh, this is confusing stuff. Senior and Shane kind of seemed like the same temperament, whereas Vince Jr. was like the flamboyant one with the ambition or whatever and willing to do whatever. But he's certainly, it seems like every step that Vince took, including that, what you were saying, like not disregarding the territory thing, he did that, which his dad didn't like, I guess, because his dad wasn't dead by the time he was doing this stuff, right? His dad was still alive.
See, and that was another thing that the version of the story that I had always been told by the people who were there at the time that talk about these things now was that it was all done after his dad died. So I don't know if they again just went with Vince's narrative because it must be pointed out this is a Bill Simmons produced show.
I noticed that.
And this guy has some people on here. Like when they did the Andre the Giant documentary, there was stuff that was just absolutely wrong. They stated in that show that Andre toured the country as a heel. He never did that. He was a touring face, a baby face, as they say. I don't know why they always keep baby in there. You can
he didn't become a heel till later, right? When he came back against Hogan.
the final run for Hogan for WrestleMania 3. Like towards the end of the career, they pushed him as a heel. He had been a good guy the whole time. So you have Bill Simmons putting people out here that don't know what the fuck they're talking about, but because this is such a weirdo niche genre, you can get away with it with the normies because they don't fucking know either. But I
Right.
do. Except in this case where it seems like things are a little murky. So the story, the way I always heard it, was that he did wait until his dad was in his deathbed to start making these
Well,
moves.
I mean, I think that makes sense. And, you know, what I was saying kind of was that it seems like Vince, like their ambition might have been similar, him and his father, but Vince always wanted to do like what his father wouldn't have wanted him to do. It seems like you said, like the territories thing. And then also Vince even, I mean, Junior even talks about it going through the documentary. He's like, my dad would have advised me not to become a character in the WWE
Right. Yeah.
and do all these things where he's like getting his family involved in stuff. He says that actively, like, my dad would not have approved of me doing this kind of stuff, but I'm doing, you know, but I'm the guy, you know, I'm doing what I want to do. So, it's funny how you can see treated by his father and the rebellion it caused him, like against his father, and then also that whiplash that Shane, his son, receives from that treatment. You know what I mean? Because of how Vince was with his father, because of how he acted in, you know, result of that, then he treats his son a certain way too, and has a certain relationship with his son because of that. Like it all reflects and kind of dominoes. You can see the lines, you know, being
Yeah.
the dots being connected, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It was very cyclical. And to your point, multiple times later in the episodes, Shane will talk about, or they will talk, people will mention that Shane had problems with some of the thing. He was more conservative, as Vince put it.
Yeah.
Well, is it conservative to not want an incest storyline? That's, appreciate you, Andy.
Well, there was this one storyline where I got Steph pregnant, and they didn't really want to do that one, so we decided not to do that one.
Yeah, bunch of cowards. But no, thank you so much for coming by, Andy. While we're talking about things that were lied about, narratives that were ran with, that Vince likes to put out there, WrestleMania, he just takes credit for that idea, saying, "Oh, Linda forced me on vacation. I came back with this idea.
Yeah,
We're
that's
gonna do the
exactly how
Super
he
Bowl
put
of
it.
wrestling." Correction. Crockett Promotions, run by the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, baby. We're going to be in major motion picture and TV sitcoms. They did it first, all right? It was not his idea. Guess what? It wasn't even his idea to call it WrestleMania. That would be our beautiful bald brethren, Mr. Howard Finkel, the ring announcer, who would say, like, the ultimate warrior. But no, he came up with WrestleMania, not Vince McMahon, not Vince McMahon's name, not his idea. Also was not his idea in WrestleMania 3 to do multiple locations. Guess what, baby? I did that one first too. That's me, the American Dream. Dusty
He
Rhodes. I did 2 cities. And Vince McMahon said, I have to do better than you, baby. So then he came in, he said, I'm gonna do 3 cities because 3 cities is bigger than 2.
He did that a lot, and you see it over the course of his career. He sees someone do something, and then he's like, he implements it into WWE, and then says, "That was my idea all along. What a great idea, huh? I'm such a businessman." It's like he stole he stole talent, he stole ideas. You know, even as we go through here, like when we talk about the attitude stuff was a stolen idea. Essentially, it's the same, it's a rip off of somebody else's thing. Like he's constantly ripping off and then saying, "It was me, I did it.
Yep.
I'm the guy."
He stole the name, got the name from Shawn Michaels and stole the content from Paul Heyman in ECW. That's what they were doing. Plus, you had Vince Russo, bro. Okay.
Is
Russo
Paul
out there doing
Heyman
Swerve, Crash Television. It's going to be like Jerry Springer, bro, but with fighting.
Is Paul Heyman the bald fat guy that looks like the guy from from The Office that spills the chili or whatever.
My good sir, that is very rude of you. My
That's him
name
though,
is
right?
Paul Heyman. Yes. Oh,
He
second biggest
glazes.
sleaze bag
He's
in the industry.
when it comes to Vince, he was one of them. Like besides the other, there was another fat guy that was like his right hand man. I can't think of that guy's name.
Bruce Pritchard,
Yeah.
the Avatar.
Besides him, that Paul Heyman dude, even though he had his own separate wrestling thing at one point or whatever that he was doing, he glazes he works for them now, right? He's like part of
Yes.
WWE now. He
Yep.
glazes the fuck out of Vince and out of them, like WWE. You can tell that he's like kissing the ring.
And he is a two-faced bastard. And you see
You
a
can tell.
smidge of it. Because did you see the scene when he was talking to Stephanie and he's like, well, Stephanie, you know that your father is always pinning you two against
Yeah,
each
they're
other.
like
You see that,
whispering.
don't you? I mean, come on, you see that. This man, to quote Jim Cornette, just another excuse for me to do a voice. That motherfucking Paul Heyman would rather climb a tree and tell a lie than stand on his 2 feet and tell the truth. All right. Paul Heyman's the most two-faced bastard in the industry. He might if the sex stuff wasn't around, if the I'm gonna take a dump on your forehead, pal. If that didn't exist, Paul Heyman might be worse than Vince McMahon. Paul Heyman, while he was running ECW into the ground, got his wrestlers to put their tickets on their airplane tickets on their own credit cards. Several people who worked for him went bankrupt because they believed in the company and he kept telling them lies. Up until the final night where they closed their door at ECW, he had been secretly working for Vince McMahon. And when everyone who was working for him got laid off and fired, he just went to Vince McMahon and had a job waiting for him because he had already been working there. Just fucked everyone over, pulled the ladder up on his way. Say what?
Vince poached all those people though too, right? Eventually.
Eventually, yep. A lot of them went to WCW first. But
Steve Austin was from there, right? And then like you could see as it was showing the ECW and him like their rinky dink wrestling thing going on, it showed like 3, 4, 5 different people that end up going on to be big WWE guys. I think Eddie Guerrero maybe was one of the people
Eddie
there.
Was there.
Maybe that crazy dude that ended up killing his family.
He was, Chris Benoit. And that was another one where Vince didn't really want to tell any of the truth there. He just went crazy. Definitely didn't have CTE, pal. That's not my fault, pal.
Let's talk about that because I forget which episode that fell in, and I don't think I made a note about that. But I found the whole bit about the CTE fascinating because I've always thought, like, there are just some people that won't admit that getting your head banged around and your brain bouncing off the inside of your skull is going to fuck you up eventually. I mean, even Steve Austin in this,
that fucking dumbass.
He says, I don't really believe in that fucking CTE shit. I still don't.
He says, and I quote, I'm not a CTE guy. Just don't believe in it. Like, what, dude? This isn't a religion, you fuck wagon. What are we talking about?
I was waiting for him. It almost even, maybe I'm imagining this, thinking back on it, but I almost felt like they gave pause. Like he says it and then they let it hang for a second. Like, because I thought he was going to follow it up with like, I'm not really a CTE guy, but I guess nowadays, the science really says blah, blah, blah. No. He's just like, I'm not really a CTE guy. It's like, actually, clearly you are a CTE guy.
Yeah.
You are the CTE guy.
Clearly he has it because what they didn't show you is they didn't even ask him a question about CTE on that. He was just having an Alzheimer's moment. Like, oh, yeah, I'm not really a big CTE guy. They're like, what? Steve. Hello. Steve. Hi. We were talking about Vince again. Oh, yeah. Hell yeah. All right. Goddamn.
I love that guy. But
I love everything of Vince.
Yeah, the CTE bit was cool. It is cool how they eventually, the WWE kind of embraces it and makes their practices a little better. And Vince helps, he funds some of these CTE scientific research things to get that ball rolling. So it did end up being positive eventually, But Vince only does shit like that to save face. It's like, yeah, there's an easy one that I can check off. Like, not only is it a tax write-off, but it also makes me look a little better.
Yeah. Oh, dude, just like the coping he does, which what up, Tarar? Hard, easy for me to say, pal. God damn. Shout out, welcome in the chat. You got your late pass. I like it. The death of Owen Hart when he, on top, what I think is kind of similar to the CT, his inability to admit any accountability of that, where he talks about not only did that live audience absolutely see a man fall from the rafters to his death.
It was dark in
Yeah.
there. Okay.
The people on TV didn't see it, but everyone in that arena saw that. What was more important, as they pointed out, that dude's family and his coworkers and his friends had to then go out and wrestle in a mat that most likely was stained in his blood. Because I don't think he fall. Some blood's gonna get out, right? You fall.
They showed where his blood was on the mat. I feel like they're like, hey, his blood's still on the mat, and they show it.
Ugh.
And then you see like there's a point, I think maybe Steve Austin was wrestling like The Undertaker or something that night, or it was The Undertaker. It just shows him and he's like moving around the ring and he locks eyes with like the blood splatter that they showed. Like, those guys are each jumping in the ring and like just looking around like, oh my God, like, okay, I guess this is how this is my job, whatever. But they're looking around like, oh my God, he was just fucking laying here dead. And the show must go on, baby. And then Vince is like, well, if I died, I would have told him to keep going. So, what can I say?
And the one thing that I believe with 100% certainty, possibly the only truth that Vince McMahon told in this entire show, was when he said, well, yeah, if it were my son, I still would have had the show go on. I do believe that. I believe if Shane had fallen to his death, Vince would have said, well,
easy.
You're up, Steph. We're going to... He probably walked up to her and said, you sure you don't want to do that pregnancy angle, Steph? Maybe we can have you come
Your
down
brother's not here to stop me now.
Yeah, no one's here to stop me now, Stephanie. It's ruthless aggression.
Ruthless aggression. There we go. But in this Heat episode 2, it has all these lawsuits in it that piqued my interest even before now, because now it's like he has a waterfall of fucking lawsuits. It seems like everyone and their sister is coming out with, what he did to them. But like, even all it does in episode 1 is intro him into how he got into the business, his start or whatever. But then in episode 2, it starts talking about his career. So that's the beginning of his career, right? Episode 2 is talking about, some of the things he started out with. And right then, right at the beginning, right at the start of his career, lawsuits at the wazoo. Okay. In that episode, there's a part they're talking about, like, he's getting sued by this person, he's getting sued by that person. There was a time at one point he was getting sued by a lady. It was the first female ref lady, I think, that he had. She had said he did some, pretty sure it was sexual something. You know what I mean? He touched her or coerced her inappropriately. It was something like that. So she was in a lawsuit with him. Then you also had Hulk Hogan, who had, and this is one I want to talk about after I finish this point. Hulk Hogan, who had fucking fucked up a late night host and busted his head open. They were getting sued for that. And then what was the other one? Oh, the feds were investigating him for steroids or whatever, for distributing steroids to his employees. So there was a point in time when it's 3 completely separate lawsuits at once. I was like, this is the beginning of the documentary. We're at the beginning. He's got 3 at the same time.
And what's wild was what he said before we moved past the Rita allegations, because he said something that I found to be very damning. He said, well, there's no truth to it. It was consensual. And if it was rape, the statute of limitations are up.
Yeah.
Like, if the first part is true, there is no need to say the second one.
He's like, it's long past time that she could do anything about it.
Yeah, she can't. I didn't do it, and she can't do anything, but she can't prove it anyway. It's, what the fuck? What? Huh? See, that's why the old man, this was good that they waited until he was this old to do this. So every once in a while, the truth could eke out.
Right. But yeah, like all that, it's just so it's that fucking that was one of the lawsuits, what you were saying with that lady. But then the Hulk Hogan thing blew. I never knew this. I had never seen the clip. I had never heard of this instance. They got the Hulk to go on some kind of it wasn't like any of the mainstream ones. It wasn't Leno and it wasn't, Carson or anybody. It was like some rando late night.
I think it was Richard Belzer was his name. That's why I made us tiny for a second. The top right, if you're looking at, you see Hulk
that's
there. That's actually the picture. You can tell, and this is right when the man's body went limp. And I honestly wouldn't show the footage on here for folks anyway, because it's pretty sickening. I mean, his head hits the ground.
He like dangles him. It's like floppy body.
Complete dead weight. He is gone. And he slams the back of his, because Hulk just drops him. And there's they do a shot where they show Belzer walking away.
Yeah, he's like,
you can see the blood running down the back of his skull.
I've never seen anything like it, because he's like all suited up. He's like he's got the sports jacket and everything. He's all suited up, to the nines with the full head of hair. Okay. So like he looks like your typical late night host, whatever. And Hogan does his thing, chokes him out or whatever, and hangs his limp body, drops him. He hits, gets back up, and he says like, all right, we're going to break. The guy does. And then he's walking back off stage. And that's when what Kevin was saying happens. It shows him like walking off stage, and like, you can't see any of the damage because he's, like I said, he's got a full head of hair and a suit jacket on. Like he looks normal, except for a spigot of blood coming out of his head, like just dripping down his whole shit. I was like, what the fuck? He literally just they gashed his head open and it was just.
Yeah. As Jim Ross would say, he's donned the proverbial crimson hat instead of mask.
I mean, they definitely deserved that lawsuit. And Hulk was like, yeah, well, Vince wasn't too happy with me for that one.
Yeah. Dude, Hulk Hogan.
I almost killed a guy. He wasn't too happy with me for that one. Like, what the fuck, dude, man? That was one of the trippier moments of the whole thing, because I had never seen or heard of that whole engagement. So I was just like, damn, dude, what the fuck? That's a random one. Just I did not know about. I thought that was crazy. But then the last lawsuit that I was talking about with the feds is also crazy, because this motherfucker was so obsessed with, like, I mean, he makes himself a character. He makes his kids a character. He makes his wife a character. He's obsessed with that weirdness, with blurring his real life with the wrestling shit. They hire a doctor and they play him as like he's the ringside doctor. So he's like a character. People know who he is. He's on the like they show him on television. It's the same guy. This like dork with glasses, bald head guy.
Watch it.
Well, see, he doesn't come home like we do. This guy had also the Larry David fucking kooky, like mad scientist look going on. But they play this guy as a character, like the ringside doctor, to make sure everybody's doing okay after all these injuries that they had and shit. Meanwhile, this dude is also the legitimate guy backstage writing prescriptions for all of their fucking drugs and steroids and shit. Like, why would he have thought this was a good idea? It's such a wild thing to think about. We're going to make you a character while meanwhile you actually are selling steroids.
So many of Vince's mistakes were just thinking he's too big to fail. And just, like people talk about with the Janelle Grant allegations, that they've never seen a CEO act that way just so brashly without any fucking attempt to try to hide it. Where, it's just, he doesn't give a shit. He's like, oh, this is me, pal. You're going to live with it. You're going to learn to you're going to learn to like the taste of my shit, pal. And interestingly enough, something I want to pause on while we're here talking about the steroid trial, as I make us small again, so you can see that beautiful mustached man in highlighted in blue. Some of you folks may recognize our dear friend from down in the Baja, Mr. Jesse Ventura. I don't even live in the continental United States anymore. I'm down in the Baja because that son of a bitch Hulk Hogan busted my union. He's a union buster. He's a scab. He's a scallywag. He's a scumbag gorilla.
Mm-hmm.
And many a time, Hulk Hogan, I think the only times he was completely honest with everyone was when he said the phrase, and I made a beeline for Vince, brother. I just went straight to Vince and tattled on I went and straight, this guy's asking me if I use razor blades. I should put him in a headlock and cut off his oxygen. Hey, Jesse's over here. Jesse, they all want more pay. And if they get more pay, then you guys can't keep selling action figures and have them say Hulk Hogan when they're not Hulk. Actually, WCW did that. But what I'm getting at is Hulk Hogan betrayed everyone because he was the top guy. He was the top draw. And if it were fair play for everyone, he doesn't have anything to gain from that. So when he finds out his former friend is trying to unionize, for the next 30 years, these people were all treated as independent contractors, not given proper insurance. They are worked as employees, but treated legally as independent contractors, much to their own detriment. So Hogan just wanted to take that moment to point out another huge scumbag. We've talked about it a ton in the past. No real secret. Hulk Hogan has probably more famous for his many lies now than his world championships. But that was another one that is just, as you said, it all starts to add up. And it was all very apparent from day one that this guy was a dirtbag, was a bastard.
He even says, like, I love Jesse Ventura and I love what he was trying to do for wrestling back then. And luckily it's better now. Nice to see you, Harles. Luckily it's better now for all these wrestlers, but I did think that I love that whole bit with the Jesse and the Hulk thing or whatever, and him going to Vince and blah, blah, blah. Like, that's an interesting story. And two things out of that. One, Vince says after, like, when they're talking about it, Vince is like, oh yeah, fuck that guy anyways. Like, nobody would have followed him, so who cares? Yeah. He's like, he was trying to unionize them. Oh, fuck him anyways. They wouldn't have listened to him.
Which is why Vince went to them and said, if anyone's at that meeting, you're fired. Because he just knew no one would show to the meeting. Yeah. So he had to threaten them.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Vince clearly that's like one of those moments where there ain't nothing you can say, buddy. It's pretty cut and dry that you're a scumbag for that instance. But also, although I've known of Jesse Ventura and knew of him back then, even I did not, or I was just not familiar with some of those outfits that Buddy had going on. Holy shit. What the fuck? I swear one of them, he had like lashes that went out to here. Yeah.
Dude invented drip. Actually, he took it from David Bowie.
He was like drag. Yeah, he was doing drag essentially. Yeah. He really was.
Well, I toured with the Stones a lot. This is the way men dressed this way, Danny, in the 60s and the 70s.
I love Kiss.
Just a big backstage, just one big orgy pit. Did I ever tell you about how I got to announce the Rolling Stones? There's a way you have to do it. You're not allowed to ad-lib. You have to say, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the greatest band in rock and roll, the Rolling Stones. I'm Jesse Ventura.
Oh man, but yeah, his outfits were cracking me up when it was showing the little montage of him. I was like, what the fuck? I did not know that he got down like this. He was like pre Ric Flair kind of thing. Like, I feel like you can see some of those later on wrestlers get like their inspiration. Maybe they were the same time. I
That's
don't
funny.
know.
No, they were the same time, but Ric Flair, when you'd say that as an old man, absolutely dresses the way Jesse Ventura dressed in the 80s. It's like 100%. He definitely did. But no, they kind of took it from superstar Billy Graham, which Vince talked about that guy's kayfabe brother, Dr. Jerry Graham, which I believe was
Is that the one
one
that
of
he said
one
was
of
his
the
favorite?
yeah, I think he named one of his dildos after that guy. Uh,
No,
so yeah,
this
they shared
dude,
influences. They were all from the same time.
this dude. That when he was talking, that was one of the funnier moments for me too. He's like, there's this guy that was my favorite wrestler, and it was this big fat dude, and he's like, he's flamboyant, full of energy or whatever. And it was that I never noticed. He's like, one of the first things I had to do joining in on the WWE was your strut. You gotta have the strut. He walks like I don't even know how to do it. He walks like swinging his arms. It just makes me laugh so hard. And once he said it, once he was like, "Yeah, you had to learn the strut." That was the first thing. Then you notice it every time. Like even when he was old, even like the more recent clips of him when he's an old fuck and he just looks like a melting bag of flesh. He's like still doing the puffing his chest out and moving his arms, like swinging his arms out or whatever. Like, what the fuck? Well, those are some of the moments. And me and Kevin had this while I was watching it, at least. I'd text Kevin and be like saying something about one of the episodes I had just watched. And it was around this point of the docuseries for me that I was like starting to forget like how much of a shitbag he was. And instead I was like indulging on the whole nostalgia of like him and Steve Austin and him like that thing, the strut character or whatever. It's just like there are a lot of aspects of him that are funny, at least, he's certainly a character. So I definitely found myself getting lost in that as we were going through.
Yeah, they do a good job of the early stages, kind of just focusing on the wrestling side of it. It very quickly became more about, not necessarily who the real Mr. McMahon is, but a recap of all of his business moves, which in a way, I mean, that's what his whole life is. So to an extent, there is no real Mr. McMahon behind the scenes. But I wish they had been able to uncover more about his youth. I think at this point Vince probably had some people killed because no one seems to be able to speak about his first 12 years. It's as if that entire town has vanished. No one is around to dispute these things where he's like, "Oh, I was a real tough guy. I'd get into fights. I would kick ass. I would fight for Linda. I'd say, Linda, I'll defend your honor in the streets, the mean streets. Grew up in a trailer."
He did say that a lot, didn't he? He was like, "Yeah, I've always been a tough guy or whatever, blah, blah, blah." Like, I don't know. I don't know about that, but okay.
Balls of steel, pal.
I feel like guys that have the same temperament as him, like look to him as a hero, kind of like this. He gives this facade of like, yeah, like, yeah, I'm a tough guy, blah, blah, blah. But in reality, like he would fold at, a real tough guy coming around. I feel like he's an idol to those kind of people. I know so many people like that are just some fucking sad sack, but they go, well, yeah, I'm a tough guy. I worked for a guy, my last job that I had, I worked for this big fat loser that was always this. But the moment you push back on those kind of people, oh, I don't want any trouble.
Well, bark at him one time. Oh, yeah. Everyone, if you're getting pushed around by somebody in your life, you just get loud one time. It's just if all else has failed, you've turned the other cheek and it don't work, just bark at him. And Danny's right. A lot of times you will see oh, okay, well now I will respect you because I can't just push you around, and especially in that industry, which is something they go on to say about Shane later on. Like Shane was too nice, and you can't be nice in a business full of egos where you're paid based on the number of tickets you can sell, the number of t-shirts you can sell. Everybody's got an opinion. They all want what's best for them, mostly more than the company. So you can't be a pushover. You can't be a nice guy. You got to have ruthless aggression. And by the way, welcome, new subscriber. Thank you. Shout out
What
Primus
up?
verse Unicron says, I wish they interviewed the family, the family of Vince's mom and the family of Vince's stepdad. Yeah, see stuff like that where it's like people who actually got to see what he was like, because I have a feeling he was very socially awkward growing up. He seemed to have been, I mean, if this is how he behaves now with money, with influence, with friends, could you imagine how isolated he probably was as a kid? And when he talks about, and I'm sorry, this just popped into my head like a squirrel. When he talks about his wife, and maybe they just edited this to make him look bad, but when he says why he marries his wife, it's like talking about like why I bought my first house. You know, he's like, well, both her
She checked
parents
all the boxes.
had money. Yeah, they were middle class. I liked that about her. She was a hard worker. I'm like, Jesus, bro. Like,
He kind of
it's your wife, you're not hiring an assistant here, but in his eyes, I think he was.
He kind of says it like it is like an asset, though. He's like, she's all the things that I'm not, you know, I'm the creative side and she did all the business, you know, whatever. I'm coming up with the plot lines and she's doing the back end stuff. Primus versus Unicron. Is it Primus the band versus Unicron? Because I think Primus the band would eventually triumph over Unicron from Transformers.
Ooh.
You know, I think.
Oh,
I'd like to
dude, Optimus Primus. I'd be into that.
What is that? The Transformers standing in for the band Primus?
Yes, exactly.
Optimus Primus.
Yep.
I like that, you know. Do you think Bumblebee would be on the bass or on the drums?
Ooh. I think you put Bumblebee on the bass. I feel like he'd have some funky Flea-esque bass lines, you know, really get you going. I don't know who they'd put on the drums though. That's a good question.
I'm surprised that wasn't an 80s like cartoon or whatever, rip off of like Josie and the Pussycats, but it's Optimus and the, you know, three amigos decide to go on tour. I could see him like old school cartoon where he's like playing on the drums.
Headbug says drums for Bumblebee.
Oh, that's all good stuff though. I love that. But you know, back on topic, I guess, getting into the family stuff. I feel like that is a very interesting part of this whole series here. Gosh, there's so much with the family stuff that's funny. Obviously, the dynamic between him and his son, and how he's just basically down to fuck his son over and does not give a shit about his son, it seems like.
So my dad would have done to me, pal.
Yeah, right. But I personally don't remember, never knew that the mother was actually involved in some of the storylines. And that was some of the most like fucked, especially now reflecting on it after all this information has come out present day. That is some of the dirtiest storylines that he did in WWE. Now imagine, okay? The storyline was Vince is a, you know, delinquent pervert, and who is it? Trish Stratus was her name, I think.
Oh god, yeah, Trish Stratus.
Okay. So there was a storyline that he comes up with this shit. So it's his storyline. Now, obviously, we're playing a character, whatever. Well, yeah, we'll see how much of a character it ends up being. But he sets it up so that Trish is drugging his wife, overdosing her on her drugs to the point that she's just zombie in a wheelchair, and Trish is wheeling her around. And then they like wheel her into the ring, or like, you know, into the shot for whatever they're doing backstage, and she's just zombified. And then Trish will like get her tits out and make out with Vince like right in front of her, and they talk about it as like mom was in on it, you know, mom came up with some of the storylines, whatever, you know, mom was fine with it. And I'm like, I'm sure she was, But the reality of it all is that he made a storyline where he did all this. It's all fun and games if it wasn't true when he's in the background cheating on her on multiple occasions, doing the most degenerate things. And that's just the stuff that we know about. So it's like,
right.
he convinces his wife to go along with the joke or whatever, but in reality, there was no joke. He was doing this literally, and it's almost like he's getting her permission to do it, you know? Like, I feel like he frequently, over the course of his life, confused that character of McMahon and himself. Like, it's not really a character. Just like these storylines aren't really stories. It's real. It's not like tall tales, you know? This is like, he is cheating on his wife all the time with ladies. And like, it's funny when they do it on the show, but he's literally getting her permission to do it on the show and doing it in real life too. Like it's like he can take that permission elsewhere.
And by permission, he's doing it regardless, and she's just getting used to it over time. There is no permission here. He's doing it, and at a certain point, she decided to go along with it. But yeah, so many of those different storylines in that time period were just him flaunting his allegedly very real affairs on TV in front of his wife. Tons of people have talked about, the plane rides, private time with divas in his office and all this kind of stuff. Not a ton of names have been named, but it's quite possible and pretty well understood that there were several people who either were put into their place because of what they were willing to do for Vince, or would, as we saw with the one example, get buried and written off TV and essentially forced out if they weren't willing to do what was asked of them. And when you add up the Janelle Grant accusations, like, that stuff all really tracks. And you'd have to ask yourself, would a man near his 80s or in his 80s all of a sudden have all of those fetishes and desire for control, or has this been something that has slowly been escalating over time? And he's probably been pretty weird for the last 40 years. I know where I'm voting. Wrestling seems very incestuous. Oh God, hell yeah.
He
Nepotism
tried to.
Central too. Yeah.
He tried to incestuous. He tried to fucking, hey, Steph, so we're going to make you pregnant. I'm going to get you pregnant in one of these storylines, okay? And we'll like knock you down out of the ring or something to terminate the pregnancy, Don't worry about it. You won't actually come to term in the story or anything, but, I'm going to knock you up. We're going to do one of those. Doesn't that sound fun? But I mean, like, he jokes about that, obviously, but like that storyline I was talking about, he gets a new girlfriend to drug his wife until she's a zombie, wheels her around until Shane decides to fight his dad for his mother's honor. Okay. That's what has to happen in the story for him to get off of the whole I'm cheating in front of my wife thing, was that Shane had to challenge him to a family match or whatever to get him to stop treating his mother this way. It's just, God, some of the shit that they come up with, these storylines, it's like, holy.
Headbug says this sounds like an Acolyte storyline.
It all comes back to Star Wars, doesn't it?
Oh, the Acolyte, written by Vince Russo.
Oh, goodness gracious. But there was something that I wanted to ask you about. Where is it? So when we were talking about like how he's treated people, his family, blah blah blah. The big question that I had out of all of this, and it's not his family, because I think it's when you watch the family episode, it's pretty explicit how he feels about everyone. It's like Stephanie, his daughter, is like his successor. He chooses her. She's the one that's going to take over. She's more like him, whatever, than Shane. He fucks Shane off, whatever. They pretty much make that all explicit. The mother thing we all talked about. But in the last one, when they're talking about the lawsuits and the text messages and the blah, 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 all this, Brock Lesnar, okay, is named as the guy that Vince tries to traffic this poor young woman to, right? He says like, Brock saw your picture and he approves or whatever and shit like that in the text messages. And it made me think about when they were talking about some of the big moments of WWE over the years. And one of the big moments was Undertaker losing his first WrestleMania.
Stupid.
And he loses his first WrestleMania to Brock Lesnar. And later on, when they're asking people about their opinions of Vince and blah, 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 Undertaker, the guy, not the character, but the dude, real dude, what's his name?
Mark Calloway.
Mark says, I would take a bullet for that guy. You know, I would take a bullet for Vince, which like his whole career has been aided by this guy. So I feel that. But then when you think about the nuances of it all and how things played out, and like this situation that I was talking about, the WrestleMania, it's like, I don't think Vince cares about anyone, even the people that were his like long time partners in this whole thing, like The Undertaker, for example, who was with him forever, you know. I think that Vince was always looking for the next thing. And he didn't care about The Undertaker or his reputation. He thought, oh, Brock's my new dude. I'm in tight with Brock. Brock can win this time. We're going to propel his career. You know what I mean? And in a moment where you can tell when Mark is talking about, he's like, his legacy. And he's like, you know, I was shocked when they said that they were going to make me lose. And he's like, I didn't want to.
The day of.
Right. He's like, I didn't want to do it. You know, he's talking about how he didn't, like, it wasn't fair to him, whatever. And to me, it all just seems like Vince didn't care about his feelings. He cared about the next big thing and moving the next person up. Or maybe there's somebody else that he likes more than Undertaker, Brock. Because I don't know if these really had any correlation, obviously, but it just makes me think it's like, oh, Vince is really tight with that Brock guy enough that he would solicit, or he would get fucking traffic women to him.
Well,
so
yeah.
They must be really tight. And
I really needed him to re-sign, pal. I don't have Tony Khan's money.
But that's what I just think about is like, I feel bad for some of these people that are like die hard. You know, they would guard Vince's reputation. Even when they ask, what's Vince's legacy? It's like all of these people that worked with him and his family and everything, none of them wanted to say shit. They're all speechless when it came to what is his legacy. And it's because they don't like, they have this reverence for him. They have this like, I don't know, disrespect
so they can't
for
say
him.
the quiet part. Yeah.
They can't say what they really feel. And is that they all know that he's a dirty motherfucker. And you know it in that moment when they're all speechless, when they ask him that question. It's like, you know, if you really just thought that he was the best person ever, you would have just said it.
But yeah, like Tony Atlas. Tony Atlas,
yeah,
he's the best promoter of all time.
Yeah, you can't take that away from him.
Take that away from him. Like, there you go. That's why Tony's here.
Tony says, they say, oh, something about, is McMahon racist at one point? And they're discussing that. And Tony's like, he don't see black, he don't see white, he only see green. Right. Right, I was like, dude, this guy is glazing the fuck out of old Vince here. But it just like, it really hammers home how much of a degenerate he is in the end. And I think little things that I picked up on, like that Brock Lesnar thing, just makes me think like he never cared about any single one of you motherfuckers. He never cared about his wife or his son. Okay. None of that. He didn't care about any of that. It's all Vince, baby. Vince, baby. That's number one in his career and his legacy and his, you know, keeping Vince on top was the only thing that ever mattered. to this guy.
That's
Ever.
why we stopped calling them fans and referred to them as the WWE Universe, pal, because who rules over a universe? I do, and I'm God. I'm the God of this universe.
And even in the end, when he's got all these lawsuits coming out and all these allegations and all this dirt, the sequence of events was kind of funny. This is like 2022, I think, or whatever, when stuff starts coming out. And he's like, okay, I got to leave the company. So he leaves. And then it seems like Steph takes over with Triple H or whatever. They're like the ones running it, which I'll come back to that in a second because I have a question for you. But he leaves amidst all these allegations. They take over. Then he comes back and Steph immediately leaves the company. She says, fuck you, I'm gone, and leaves. And like even in those moments where he's done, he's packing up the bags and leaving. Like he should
say a lot.
He can't give it up, and he's willing to come back so against everyone else's wishes that his own daughter is like, fuck you, I'm leaving. Like,
yeah, because she's a member of that board, the same board that knew these investigations were coming. And it's alluded to pretty heavily that she was probably the person close to him that convinced him to retire, which he then immediately regretted, forced his way back in so he could sell the company. But yeah, to me, it's pretty revealing the fact that his daughter, and they showed all of the things she was willing to put up with, all the things she was willing to do. The fact that she got to a point where if dad is here, I'm not going to be here, tells me that she saw something pretty heinous to give up on running the family business like that.
Well, yeah, right. It's like, because I think it probably is a part due to what I already said, where it's like he was essentially like flaunting to his wife, like, yeah, I'm cheating on you, bitch. Yeah, I can get with all these sexy fucking WWE women. Suck. And then nothing you can do about it. It's just a storyline.
I'm a genetic jackhammer. I can't help it. My sex drive.
One of the last things that I wanted to ask you about is where the WWE ended up, kind of a lot of questions about that. Who runs it now? Who runs it after all this? Because like I said, it seemed like it was Stephanie and Triple H, but then she exits when he comes back. And then even in a more, I guess, maybe not shocking turn of events, but another turn of events, they merge with UFC, which probably tosses up, all that as well. But yeah, who's in charge now? And I did want to know, pretty funny that Shane, the son, is like, hey, we should, at one point is like, hey, we should buy UFC. And his dad's like, nah, you can with your own money, but you can't. And I don't really want to. I don't think any idea you come up with is really worth anything. So, nah, you can go do your own work like I did.
Yeah. What was Shane expecting? Was he expecting his dad to like let him run the business and loan him money that he can then just pay back through the profits of that business? Like, who would do something like that? Like, nobody gets these kind of handouts. Life's not that easy.
Vince even says it like that too when they talk about it. He's like, pretty novel idea to pay my dad's own to pay my loan with my dad's own business's funds or whatever, right? He's like, just turned it around and spent the money I made right back in the business or whatever.
I don't know why more children don't just do this. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do. Everyone should be millionaires. But I'm glad you mentioned the UFC thing, because I was going to find a way to shoehorn the Shane thing in before we talk about who runs it now, because he got a bad rap, not only just by kind of getting forced out of the back end. They talk about all the things he was willing to do on camera, essentially to win his father's approval. Put his body. I mean, the things that Shane McMahon did were insane. The things he jumped off of, the things he jumped into.
Shit,
yeah, just absolutely ridiculous what he was willing to put his body through.
The match where he was like coming. What I can't
through the
remember if it,
glass with Kurt Angle, and he just kept
yes,
bouncing him off the glass. Oh
yes.
my god, dude!
Oh my God, he's like throwing him at this glass that's supposed to break. And this was like his comeback. Was this his comeback match? Right? This is
I
when
don't
he
know if
came.
that. I don't remember if it was that one. I don't think was a comeback. That was during
Oh,
his like
okay.
while he was younger, but still, it was
But you see him toss this
brutal.
guy. Boom, he just bounced off the glass. And the like the idea that they're just fuck it, pick it. Like I'm surprised that they do their wrestling like that, to be honest. Is that he threw him through and then he bounces off and they're like, fuck it, try it again. And they throw him through it again. Okay, we made it this time. And they get to the next one. Bounces off of it twice. And then they finally slam him through. It's like, you'd think you'd just, well, let's forget about the glass this time, maybe, and not bounce him off.
Or after the
5
first
times.
one, just throw it because all they did was cut to a different camera, and then he just threw him through like it was an old cowboy western, at the saloon. And
Shane was willing to go above and beyond.
yeah, so he was willing to do all of that, and then business wise, the the WWE would have been a lot better off potentially if they had listened to Shane. Not only could they gotten the UFC when it was struggling and when it was cheaper, and instead of what we'll talk about here in a second, instead of the UFC being the majority partner of TKO, it would actually be an affiliate of the WWE. So those things could be reversed right now if he had listened to his son. Also, when the
Love
internet
that.
was a thing, Shane McMahon was all over his dad about an internet presence, having shows that were exclusive to the web, doing all of this stuff. His dad didn't want anything to do with that. Well, now, I mean, it's even got a name, the IWC, the Internet Wrestling Community. The internet is so ingrained with wrestling and wrestling's culture that's another one that it just feels like, God damn, Vince, if you need more evidence that he's not really that smart and he got a couple of favors along the way. I mean, he's not a genius, I guess. I shouldn't say he's not that smart, but he's
He's
not
smart
this
enough to steal everyone
genius.
else's
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. He's smart enough to steal what works from other people. But when presented with an opportunity to do something new, to branch out, time and time again, he has faltered doing that. It's always been someone else taking the lead, whether it with Death Day Road, the baby, and the pay-per-view, then the multi-arena matches, or whether it was Paul Heyman with ECW, sir, and our hardcore 90s post-grunge action that everyone loves. All right. He's just everything was taken from somebody else. But when he has a chance to expand, the one thing I will give him credit for, Vince did always envision there being a WWE network. Now, at that time, that would have just been like its own TV channel, not an app. So he wasn't completely tapped out from it. But yeah, Shane gets a horrible deal, but potentially it might have been the best. Like Harl says, his biopic would be awesome. Maybe he got out, the old Harvey Dent saying, he got out while he could still be a hero instead of inevitably potentially falling into the cycle of his dad. And now to talk about who does run it, because you mentioned Stephanie was the heir apparent. Lots of friction between them now. After going public and then the merger, TKO is the 51% of the shares are in control, or UFC. So UFC is 51% management, 49% WWE. And so, Vince, if he hadn't sold all of his shares, no longer had, a controlling voice in that. But his son-in-law, Paul Triple H Levesque, is the guy running all the creative now. And Shawn Michaels is kind of his number two. He runs the minor league brand, the NXT brand. So right now, one of the reasons, and this was made before really wrestling got as hot as it did with WrestleMania 40, with The Rock coming back and doing all of those Twitter promos and all that stuff. So it has had a resurgence now. It's almost maybe not quite as good as it was with the Attitude Era, but it is it's at a peak currently. But a lot of that is member berries from the night. Like they're doing a lot of storyline. They're paying homage to a lot of things you've seen. Both Paul and Shawn, they write what they know, and you see storylines that they went through 40 years ago, and they're just reusing them with new people.
I mean, it makes sense, to be honest, because like us people that watch that shit at at an age where we're nostalgic for it now. We also have the money to, like, if I want to pay-per-view WrestleMania, or if I want to dip into WWE Network or whatever, because I'm pretty sure they have like apps and shit too, right? So it's like, it makes sense, I think, for them to do that again, to like reach back to that, because they can pull in those people that actually have stable jobs and making money now as adults. Come in, buy this shit that you love, your nostalgic shit. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, it makes it more of a family venture at that point, because you got the kids. Wrestling still very much geared to a child audience. There's big parts of the show. You know, they don't do the comedy stuff as much, but once it goes to Netflix, that may change a little bit. I think they may go back to the attitude. We can say
Yeah.
fuck all we want, pal. Might even show a nipple or two. No one can stop me.
Hi Kanga. Nice to see
What
you.
up, Kanga? Yeah, good to see I'm loving seeing these familiar faces in the chat
Yeah,
today,
I
by
got
the
to
way.
see everybody today, it seems like. But yeah, I was just curious how it all ended up. So is Stephanie involved then? Is she still like is she a character, or is she out of it entirely since she left?
She's definitely not a character. I think the last time we've seen her was maybe at WrestleMania. There was a pay-per-view recently where she was ringside and they did, a camera. Hey, Stephanie McMahon's here.
I mean,
So
if Triple H is the one in charge of it all, I mean, she's obviously there somewhere. You know what I mean? Not only is it her dad's company forever, but her husband is the one that's running. You're like, right? They're married, right?
yeah,
So yeah, she's around there somewhere, I guess.
she's got to have some involvement, and I'm
Mhm.
sure she was a big part of the creative team during her time. So I'm sure she's got opinions. Paul's probably bouncing ideas off of her. And I love this comment from Harles here. Ultimately, this has really tarnished the legacy of Scooby Doo and the WWE mystery. Yeah, Rutro Raggy.
So I think ultimately, after all this, like you had said earlier, that a lot of it was a glaze fest and they left some things out. And that's apparent after, some of the shit you've told me. I think that as like soon, or maybe out of like trying not to engage in any lawsuits, people just wait until he dies. But I think somebody will come out with a documentary or beef, some kind of thing on Vince McMahon. I think they'll wait till he dies, or, do it soon to where he can't really retaliate to it a whole bunch, and really stick it to him. Like this one was kind
Yeah.
of like, we're trying to get there, but we're not going to go the full measure. I think someone will step up and be like, this is the full measure. Jesse Ventura will pay some documentarians to be like, let's do the real, or maybe not even the real, but exclusively the dirt. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because I mean, real is subjective, I guess, to different people, right? Whatever. But
Perception is reality, pal. That's
yeah,
another one he likes.
yeah, yeah. But no, I think somebody will come out and do a damning documentary on Vince, like soon, or maybe after he is gone, and really tell, like, line up all of the allegations, show all of the misdoings, misdeeds, and even get some of these people that are too scared to say something now because he's here and still alive and they don't want to, step on their guy's toes. I think a lot of these people will say stuff eventually. You know what I mean? Like they might not want to talk about his legacy now when he can hear what they have to say about it. But once he's gone, they'd be like, well, I knew he was a scumbag the whole time.
Right? Yeah, I do think there will be some people that are currently holding their tongue that eventually will speak out on some things. The only part that leaves that tough is the idea a lot of these older guys have really bad habits and don't have a lot of money because of their lack of health insurance and inability to miss dates, something that also didn't maybe get touched on as much. And Vince, the disgusting piece of shit that he is, blamed it on his fighters wanting to get into painkillers recreationally, when the reality is that the majority of them were doing it so that they could get back to work, because they didn't have health insurance. They couldn't go do things the right way. And here you have these politicians promising you, well, not maybe necessarily the politicians, but the big pharma promising you that there's no side effect to this miracle drug and it's going to heal your, and the next thing you know, you got people just addicted to painkillers, and then they're adding alcohol on top of that. You saw some footage of Kurt Angle. For about 10 years he was called Perk Angle, because he just went fucking nuts on
You can tell too.
booze and fucking Percocets. But yeah, so just some disgusting things that he just sort of bullshitted his way through, that I do believe there will be people that will come out. But to get back to my point, some of these people really need the potential payday. Like even Jesse Ventura has gone back to the WWE at this point. He's made some appearances. He apparently may have another Legends contract. That's the thing with wrestling. They kind of always come back. These guys are not good at saving their money. There's a reason they all have podcasts.
And
they're still doing signings, like they're Pete Rose, sitting out in Vegas. Here's $30 for a picture. There's a reason they're doing that. They don't have money.
And they'll all come back. I mean, it's funny how like shameless they are and how shameless Vince was too over his career. Is like the Hogan thing. Hogan comes back eventually, even after like Vince talks about how his switch to the WCW was a betrayal and hurt him, and it was one of the only personal things he dealt with in his career or whatever. Like most of it was just business, but this felt personal, whatever. Hulk comes back and they're fucking buddies now, probably,
Mm-hmm.
But one of the more interesting bits of that was when they talk about how it was one of the more famous women that worked in the industry. I can't remember which character it was or what her name was or whatever, but she had left and then sued him because of sexual assault or whatever, which is like, this is one of the countless ones. And then they worked it into a storyline that she came back and was being all pervy with Vince. And Steph says, "You're going to hire back the lady that sued you for sexual assault?" And he's like, yeah.
I was going to say, Primus just beat me to this, but Danny, you want to play conspiracy theory a little bit more. The woman you're referring to is Sable, the eventual wife of one Brock Lesnar.
No!
It's all connected.
It is. It is. Oh my God, dude. That Lesnar guy, he's going to get it too, I think. I don't know. I know nothing about this guy other than what I've learned through this whole experience and the WWE stuff. So I don't know like his behind the scenes stuff. I haven't looked too much into it, but just based off what I know, I feel I just have this sense that someday he's going to get it. He was involved somehow with Vince and with him trafficking these women, and Vince says he approved of the way he likes the way you look or whatever in the text messages. So it's like, it was more than just Vince was doing this for Brock, these kind of things. It was, they were working in concert to do these things.
It was a bonus. It was a signing bonus for his new contract.
There you like that.
Pal, if you re-sign with me, you can also fuck my assistant. Wouldn't that be great, pal? Yeah.
But yeah, no, like that dude's gonna get, I don't know if it comes out of all of these lawsuits and the stuff going on with Vince, but I think that guy will get his,
at some point.
He'll get his at some point. Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, because just recently, I didn't actually fact check this, so maybe Twitter was lying to me, but I've seen it on Twitter recently where the WWE added Brock Lesnar back to their website as a member of their roster. So he had been off the list since these allegations popped up. So there are some rumors that he may be coming back now. because it seems like the federal investigation and all that pausing Janelle's lawsuit. And this seems like the kind of thing that is going to stay in administrative limbo until Vince passes away. I don't think he's ever actually going to see anything from this, which is funny. A wrestler that Vince potentially helped cover up a murder for, Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. See, which they don't even fucking talk about. They don't talk about how a dude in the 80s beat his girlfriend to death and that Vince allegedly helped cover it up. You know what's not alleged? The fact that that dude killed his wife because he was found guilty of it in a civil case 5 or 10 years ago. But because he was so old, they said there was no point in putting him in jail. So like, there's another one. Like Vince is also accessory to fucking murder. So like, it's at some point I do think the tell all is coming, Danny. I think you're spot on. At some point it's going to come out.
Well, I'm here for it. We can come back again when the real dirt comes out. I would love that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I had an enjoyable ride on this McMahon journey. But the main takeaway, and I think even if you feel like this glazed him a bit, which I could admit to, like there definitely, I said it myself. There was points where I was forgetting about his misdeeds and just being like, it's hilarious. What up, Advent? But I think overall, once you watch the whole thing and get to the end, you can't really come out of this thinking anything else than like, he did all that gross, disgusting shit. And the legacy question, which I think was the best. It was one of the best things that they did. One of the best beats that they had in the whole documentary was like, what's Vince McMahon's legacy? And it's one of those moments where nothing says more than, any amount of words that you could spit out. You know what I mean? Their silence meant more than anything. They're all like, what is his legacy? I don't know. Yeah, we know what his legacy is. It's those
damning
poop text messages. You know what I mean?
Yeah, John Cena was my favorite. He's like, I don't think I'm the right person to answer that question. He never more in his life wished that people really couldn't see him than in that moment when people asked him, because he owes his whole fucking life to Vince McMahon. He's never gonna say a bad thing about him.
I have an inkling with that one too. Lesnar might not be the only one that I have just a little. Brock Lesnar is more apparent. I feel like he seems more like a devious guy that has some shit going on in the background. Cena seems like the guy that can wear the pretty face and no one will ever know that he's a bad guy behind the scenes. But I think that guy has some skeletons in his closet.
He was at least outed as an awkward asshole and a horrible life partner. There was now
and a China shill.
Yeah, I did not watch all of this show, but I've seen enough of the clips. At one point, there was a reality TV show because John Cena was either dating or engaged to be married. There are these two twins. I think their real name's Garcia or something. They're called the Bella Twins, and they were wrestlers, and both of them were engaged to marry male wrestlers on the roster. So they took that and said,
I thought you were about to say him.
Then they made a video on the hub. They made like some kind of bullshit reality TV show. And you can find these clips online of John Cena just being the most awkward, like awful asshole. At one point, my favorite one, just because it's so awkward. It's like Michael Scott levels of awkward. You're laughing. If you're either turning your face away from the screen or you're just crying laughing. Because he shows up to her house and she is like busting her ass trying to make dinner and like going all over. And he was just like, oh, I thought we were going out. And he turns into like a 12-year-old who just found out that the KFC all you can eat buffet is closed, and he just sat through 2 hours of church, and there is nothing good coming on the other side. He's got to go home and eat a bowl of Campbell's soup like the peasant he is. I don't know why that was so specific, but
I know.
he stands there looking like someone just told him his dog got hit by a train. And he is like, well, he just throws essentially a fit about not going out to dinner and having to eat food that his girlfriend decided to spend the time to cook for him. And I just can't imagine, like, shit like that. It might seem small, it might seem petty, but to me, that tells you so much about a person. Like, that's how you treat the people that care about you when they're trying to do something nice, and you can't even pretend, like, you can't even fake it. You're supposed to be an actor, dude. You're a professional actor.
Wait, wasn't that?
You can't pretend to like the fucking charcuterie board, you dipshit.
Wasn't the whole thing that circus term though? Wasn't the whole thing just kayfabe, Kevin? Are you being?
Was he?
Are they working one over?
Did
on
I
you?
get worked? Did I get worked? Maybe. I mean, for John Cena's credit, he's done more Make-A-Wishes than there are people living in the state of Hawaii. So, you know, he's done some good things for people.
Yeah, you know, you got to do.
I wouldn't be
You got to
surprised.
go over the top to make that conscious shut up. You know.
Yeah. Well, there's a point to that. Yeah, it's got a guilty. Something's weighing heavy on his mind, eh?
May have something to do with that guy over there in China that he's so fucking sold his soul to.
Yeah, maybe he met amongst the tall trees, right? You know?
Yeah,
that's a callback, gang.
Oh, but no, like I said, I really enjoyed myself, and it has been a fun time coming back to Dweeb and talking to you about it, Kevin. I don't know what I'm gonna have to come back and talk to you about next, but I do love it. It's nothing I love more than sitting down and watching something like this, a documentary or a good TV series or a good movie or whatever. But that, you know, I say nothing I love more, but maybe the one thing I love more is the, you know, hour of bullshitting about said thing I just watched.
Yes.
So this has been a good time. Thank you for having me. And it's been awesome seeing everybody in the crowd too. Lots of familiar faces. And Primus came and saw us too.
Yeah, shouts out to Primus. Appreciate the new subscriber. And yeah, man, thank you for coming. You are welcome anytime, whether we're doing a dweeb chat like this. I'm gonna be putting a little more effort into the critical corner of this channel. So if you want to join our cult of critics, not only Danny, but you all out there, I don't exactly know what that means, but come join my cult. It'll be fun. So
we
yeah,
had
we'll definitely.
We had a cult once upon a time, but you know,
yes.
So that stuff gets out of hand.
Oh, it's my favorite Creed Bratton quote. He's like, I've been in many cults, both as a follower and a leader. Had more fun as a follower, made more money as a leader. And it's just some kind of free advice you don't expect to get from NBC. But no, we are so thankful for all of you in the chat. Some of you that we haven't seen in a minute. Very grateful for all of you who hang out with us damn near 3-4 times a week now. So you are greatly appreciated. Danny, do you have anything coming up that you want to pitch to the folks, or you know, where they can find you online, any of that stuff?
Can't find me anywhere online right now. But never say never. However, you'll probably see me here, you know, at some point in the future, of course, because I love to come on and chat with Kevin about this kind of shit, and James. But never say never on the whole eggs. The eggs are still in the basket together, and the basket, you know, the Easter Bunny comes around. He'll be handing out the eggs eventually. You'll get a taste. Did that make sense? Was that a good? Is that a good metaphor?
That was very, very cryptic. I like it.
I like it that way. We'll be back, people. You'll see me and Kevin once again. Don't worry.
Like and subscribe for more vague egg content, but
Yeah.
keep your eyes and ears open, they say. And we want to, before I tell you all where you can find me and we get the hell out of here, I just want to say thank you to everyone in the chat. So Headbug, Andy Zucchini, V-Dub, Stewie, can't leave out Stu, James, shout out to James. Hope your head feels okay, brother. I know
Nice to see you,
James
James.
and Nate and our buddy E, we're out there having a good old time this weekend. So hope you guys are recovering well. Tarar, shout out to you. Thank you for coming by. Primus V Unicron, welcome to our new subscriber. Hope you stick around. And we've got Harles Barkley here in the chat and a Kangaloope sighting coming here at the end, not to mention Advent. Thank you, Advent, for tuning in. Also, Advent's been doing some chill streams, so give him a sub if you're into some laid back comedy. I've caught one of them so far. It's a lot of fun.
The last thing I saw Advent doing, I don't know what he does nowadays, but before I saw him putting together like what was it? Was he putting it? I think maybe one time I saw some tie-dye work, but then another time I feel like he was doing those why can't I think of the word? The catchers, the dream catchers. Was that Advent?
I don't know. Maybe I haven't seen that one. I know the tie-dye. I know he's been posting about tie-dye videos. So
we love tie-dye.
Check that out. And other than that, folks, again, thank you all so much for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at @KevNevic_. That's where we'll be putting any updates that go on any of these channels. Bite Size Sports, you can find me there. Carnage Media, we've got a pay-per-view next weekend. The preliminary fights are free. So if you want to see some free title fights and hear me do the play-by-play, go over to Carnage Media right now and subscribe. Get those notifications turned on. As far as us dweebs go, you can expect to see James and I in our regularly scheduled time tomorrow on the Weekly Dweeb. We're going to have a lot of topics to talk about. And then Wednesday night, Han Shot First, back again. I believe we're still doing Rebels. We're doing another Rebels arc, but I'm not 100% sure on that. James is the captain of that Star Destroyer, so just stay tuned. But until next time, guys, we greatly appreciate you. Thank you again, Danny, for making the time and hitting me up. This was all Danny's idea, by the way, gang. So you have
blame me.
Wonderful wonderful Sunday show. Let us know, if you want to hear us talk about something else. Submissions are always open. Let us know what you'd like us to talk about. And until next time, y'all take care now.